Amen. As most of you know, I've been sick for a couple of weeks. I was in the hospital for the last week. I got out Monday, and I was sharing that I've been working every night in my secondary job of escorting oversized trucks every night this week in the wee hours too, which was probably not a wise thing to do, but I figured, gee whiz, I can pay for my piano if I get this whole week of work in. But so Revelation chapter 17. So if you, like I said a little earlier, if you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning and can't get back to sleep, it's because God wants you to pray for your pastor out on the road somewhere between Hinckley and here and back. And I'm going up to Hinckley twice tonight, and all the way back to Roberts, Wisconsin. And anyway, so it's going to be a lot of fun, but God will see me through it. We're in Revelation chapter 17. Chapter 16 closed with the great Babylon being remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And chapter 17 and 18, which I hope to get through tonight, talk about Babylon the harlot. This is a recurring theme in the Old Testament. And, well, let's just start reading and jump in. Revelation 17:1. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls of wrath that have just been poured out upon the earth in judgment came and talked with me, saying, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." And so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a young woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her head was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Babylon, the mother of harlots and abominations. Interesting, I just noticed this as I was reading it. There was a young woman sitting on the beast, and this beast is the Antichrist that we introduced in our last class. And now we see a young woman, and I'm assuming beautiful and all arrayed in royal clothes and gold and precious stones and such. And she's young, and yet she's been around forever. And the next couple of chapters are going to be about this mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots and abominations. You can look at Jeremiah chapter 51, Isaiah chapter 13, Zechariah chapter 5 for further reference. We're not going to quote them in a whole lot here today, but there's plenty of material on Babylon the harlot in the Old Testament. The word harlot in the Bible suggests religious harlotry throughout the Old Testament, worshiping other gods, not being faithful to Yahweh, the Creator God. Often the phrase is, and you played the harlot with the gods of the Canaanites and such like. And what Babylon the harlot represents is not being faithful to worshiping the true God, which was something that Israel fell into again and again, in spite of all the miracles and the good kings like Jehoshaphat and Josiah and others that would come up and have revivals and tear down all the idols and everything. They'd die, their son would come into place, and he'd rebuild all the idols, and everybody be worshiping the gods of the nations around them. somehow they felt insecure that they only had one God, and that the Canaanites had all these other gods. And we didn't have a good, sexy young female God like the nations around them had. It says that she sits on many waters. The many waters is defined in a few verses up, verse 15. The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. This harlotry has spread to the entire earth among many peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Apparently, in the end times, she rides the beast, the Antichrist, to her power and to a place of greater influence than ever before. I can't help, and I don't, I'll just leave it there. I won't go there. Anyway, she depends upon the beast for her influence, the beast. And the second beast, which we determined had the appearance of a lamb, the Bible says, and that probably means it's a religious beast. So you have the political beast and then the religious beast. And it could be that the harlot is somehow, she's dependent on the beast for her power and influence. She's riding on the beast, the first beast. And yet she's very likely has something to do with the second beast, which is a religious prophet or a religious system of some kind that the Antichrist uses to unify the world, but persecutes everybody who doesn't join in and agree. I want to turn back, or at least listen to me read this to you from Genesis chapter 10. We're going to get a little history of Babylon here. Babylon is more than a city. It's a symbol, and as we see, of harlotry, religious fornication, cheating on God. If you have a beautiful wife and you cheat on her, you're a no good cheating guy. And Israel had a beautiful God, and they cheated on him through other gods and goddesses. And it goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 10, where in verse 8, it's talking about the family tree of Noah. And it says, Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth. And he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, or Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar, which is the fertile crescent there between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, if you remember your history classes from 10th or 11th grade, which I'm sure you all do. Anyway, and his kingdom began there in the Fertile Crescent, and then he moved it up. From there, he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, and that's modern-day Iraq. And Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, that is the principal city. Nimrod is a key character that the Bible just gives him passing mention, but all of the other religions and other materials, which there's not too many, like the Gilgamesh epic and other things of ancient writings, give us a little bit more history on Nimrod. He's the son of Cush, the grandson of Ham, which was the son of Noah. And Cush named his son Nimrod. Nimrod means let us rebel. He just thought that the whole line of Ham had gotten a raw deal from God and from Noah, and he named his son Nimrod, which means let us rebel. Where it says like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, it's like the Hebrew phrase, it means in the face of the Lord, like a stance toward God. Oh yeah, well I'm going to kill your animals, just a real bad attitude towards it. And so he's a mighty hunter. He takes a rebellious stance toward the Lord. He's a powerful, charismatic leader. He's the builder of many cities, first of all, which is Babel. We read about Babel in Genesis chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And again, this land of Shinar, this plain, is the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. I'm at Genesis 11, verse 4, verse 3. And he dwelt there. And then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." The flood had just happened. It was in everyone's memory within a few generations. And they're trying to figure out, the next time God gets mean on us, how can we protect ourselves? This is not the attitude to have towards God. How can we fight God when the time comes again? But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the Son of Man had built. They have a name for those towers. There's ruins of some that have been found over the years down there in those areas. They're called ziggurats. And they were like a pyramid with stairways going up into a triangle. And there was a doorway on top. And they were supposed to be a doorway into heaven. And they were made for heavenly spirits to come through and for super spiritual people to go through the other way. I don't know how many people went through the other way, but that was the idea of the ziggurat building, was a stairway to heaven, as it were. And the Lord came down to see the tower which the men had built. And the Lord said, "Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do. Now nothing they propose to do will be withheld from them." Mankind has incredible power when we're in unity. God gave us that power. God made us in his image. No other creature is creative like we are, whether we create good things or bad things. Man is very creative, and in a million other ways, man is in the image of God, and our capabilities are just incredible should we be able to harness them and work together. And God said, "I'm going to have to figure out a way to confuse them." And he did here, as you remember the story, no doubt. The people is one language, and this is what they begin to do. And now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down. I'm going to have to talk about us one of these days. And let us go down. Where are you at there, girl? I'm Genesis 11,
I know, but I have it on my screen.
7 or 8.
I have it on my screen, but it's not.
Okay, it's not coming up there. Well, we have Bibles. That's why we're turning to them. Let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Don't worry about it, Beck. There, you got it. Woo! So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore it is called Babel, which means confusion, because there the Lord confused the language of the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth. And ever since, the progress of mankind has been halted and set backwards by generations, sometimes through wars with all the different nations of the earth. You just start getting ahead, and then you get in a war with your neighbor. I think of India. Becky and I lived in India for several years, and it is a country. It's like America. It's a subcontinent, and it's natural resources are just incredible, and the people are wonderful. And a lot of your greatest geniuses and mathematicians and a lot of modern sciences have their roots in India. And yet it's all divided with little tribes of people that are continually fighting with each other, and a caste system that divides everybody at every level. And then they're continually fighting with Pakistan. And India and Pakistan have gotten nowhere since 1947 because they're continually fighting with each other. And God said, the only way I can halt these people and put a cramp on their style here is to divide the languages, divide them into different nations. So the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth, and they ceased building the city. Like I said, the word Babel means confusion, the confusion of the languages. But in Babel, a different kind of confusion was birthed too, religious confusion. Up until now, we don't hear a whole lot about idolatry in the book of Genesis. But after this, there's nothing but idolatry. And they're always struggling against the gods of the Egyptians, the gods of the Babylonians, the gods of the Assyrians, etc., etc., etc. From other sources, like the Gilgamesh epic, we learned that Nimrod had a wife. Her name was Semiramis, Semiramis, Semiramis. The couple started the first false religious system. The Babylonian tower is believed to be, like I said, a stairway to heaven. Initially an observatory of the heavens, and then a doorway into heaven, where supposedly they were inviting the spirits from heaven to come down and to worship them. And the worship of many gods was birthed by Nimrod and Semiramis, the stars representing various gods, which spread throughout the earth. That's how we got our constellations and everything else. The idea that the stars, we have the sun and the moon, the great lights, and then the stars are all the other lesser gods in the old way of looking at things. And they worship many gods. In time, Nimrod and Semiramis themselves were deified and became the mother and father of the false religions of the world. Nimrod became known as Bel, which simply means Lord. And Semiramis became known as Ishtar. Myths began to build up around them, like an egg fell from heaven. How did Semiramis or Ishtar come to be? An egg fell from heaven into the Euphrates River, and fish rolled it up on the shore, and she hatched, and there she was, this wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous goddess, who in the book of Revelation is sitting on the beast. And again, I said it's interesting that she's a young woman because she's thousands and thousands of years old. But she was at one time a real individual. Nimrod and Semiramis are otherwise known as Bel and Ishtar. As the worship of Bel and Ishtar, Becky.
Where are you? In our translation, it doesn't say if she's a young woman.
Right here in Revelation, we just read it.
That it says
They're a young woman.
Ours just says young. Ours just says woman.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
The New King James says young.
No. Okay. Sorry,
Did you miss something? Am I right?
Revelation, what's
Revelation 17, and I saw a woman.
17? A woman. It just says, I saw a woman.
Where in the heck did I get young? So he carried me away into the spirit world, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet piece. The woman was arrayed in purple. It doesn't say young. I invented that just out of my head. Well, trust me, if she appeared to you, she'd be young and beautiful. You don't put an old hag on the beast
Exactly.
and set him out in arrayed in all these beautiful clothes. This is a real looker, babe. Anyway, as the religion spread to Canaan's land, they became known as Baal and Ashtoreth. You can see the Bel and Ishtar. Actually, we mispronounce Baal as we do most Bible words. If you ever notice, Baal is spelled with 2 A's, and it's Baal. That's how the initial, it's actually pronounced Baal. And Bel and Ishtar became Baal and Ashtoreth, or Ashtoreth became Astarte. In the New Testament, they had trouble with the worshipers in Ephesus who worshiped Diana of the Ephesians. But Diana of the Greek and Romans, or Artemis, the Greeks called her Artemis, the Romans called her Diana. You remember it all, your mythology from then? There are different names between the Romans and the Greeks. Anyway, but this statue in Ephesus was not the archer woman that went through the woods, the Artemis that the Romans and Greeks talked about. This is a spitting image of Ashtoreth that is in Ephesus. Somehow the worship of Ashtoreth became ensconced in Ephesus and Asia Minor as well. Of course, by this time it had gone a lot farther than that. The Phoenicians, in the Bible called the Tyre and Sidon, the Phoenicians were the shipping people of the Old Testament times, and they traveled and did trade all over the world as far as the British Isles. And they introduced their religion to the British Isles. And when they got to the British Isles, they introduced the worship of Bel and Ishtar again, and only this, with the language there, it became Bel and Easter, which is one of my big peeves in the whole world, that we worship the resurrection of Christ with the name of the false goddess of all time. And I've read some things. Well, no, that's not really where it comes from. It's the old English word for east, like the eastern direction. No, it's not. It's straight from Ishtar. You can follow the track right down. And the worship was the same. And so when St. Patrick and some of the early missionaries, not St. Patrick, St. Patrick actually, yes, he was one of them. When the early missionaries came to Ireland and some of the lands around there, they found this ancient pagan religion where they were worshiping. In fact, their holy days we still honor today. They worship Bridget, who was a goddess of fertility, on February 2nd. They worship Bel, the Lord, on May Day, which they called Beltane, the day of Baal. And they worshiped, they have a different god in August now, which should be coming up. And every early August, we have a Irish festival down on the river. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it Lou in August?
It could be Lu. Is that the fire god or the? Anyway. And of course, Halloween, which is the worship of the god of the dead. And these were the 4 holy days of the ancient Bel and Ishtar in the British Isles. And so much of what we have, and the church has the church, quote unquote, has Christianized these old days. Instead of sweeping the table clean, they've rechristened them with new names and said, let's worship Christ now. And you ever think about May Day? You have this giant pole, and there's strings coming down, and people grab a string and dance around it. Do I have to describe what that is? That's a phallic symbol with the seed coming out of it, and everybody were all the children of Baal. And the things that we do, because we just take what we've heard and practice our culture without looking at it. There was none of this going on in the Puritans, by the way. The Puritans, they said, we are going to start a new nation without any of this Baal and Ashtoreth and garbage hanging on anymore. Well, it didn't take long before it got introduced anyway, because it was already ensconced in the British Isles and the other immigrants that came, the German, and the Irish changed a lot. I'm Irish, part Irish, and so I don't take credit for it, but the Irish people, they contributed a lot of the paganism that we practice as part of our culture in America. So the Phoenicians brought the worship of Bel and Ashtoreth, or Baal and Easter, however you want to say it, to the British Isles. And of course, Easter is also celebrated with rabbits and eggs, fertility symbols. It's all about Babylon the harlot. Symbols of fertility, just like the original Ishtar was a symbol of fertility. By the way, when they say Easter, well, actually the root is the east. No, it's not, because the root is Astarte or Ishtar, and that's from an ancient word that meant star. So it's a little closer than going to the east, although it came from the east as far as Western Europeans are concerned. Anyway, so the Bible calls it the mystery, the Babylonian mystery religion in the New Testament. And from it, every false religion has sprung. You can trace it through the names of the gods. I looked up Ishtar to find out the etymology, the roots of the word today, and I saw Ishtar in India, and I said, "Oh yeah, they have Ishtar in India too," and not related to Ishtar that we're talking about here, but the names, the whole thing just continues to propagate and proliferate in the religions of the world to this day. We definitely have Baal. We definitely have harlotry and spiritual harlotry. We just have taken Christianity and thrown eggs and bunnies into it, and every godless thing you can think of. I won't go into Christmas, that's a different subject, but it's the same thing. It's pagan roots being adopted or baptized into Christianity. Anyway, and I think there's probably tracts upstairs in our tract rack somewhere that where I've done a lot of work, or on our webpage, which is kimharrington.org, by the way. Somebody stole our domain name some time ago. It was masterbuilder.org, but they sent me notices, and apparently I missed them, and I didn't renew our name, so now our name is kimharrington.org. Anyway, but if you look up kimharrington.org, there's a lot of articles on the development of our holidays and such like. Isaiah chapter 47 says, "O virgin daughter of Babylon, stand now with your enchantments and the multitude of your sorceries in which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to profit. Perhaps you will prevail. You are wearied in the multitude of your counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you." Isaiah's prophesying judgment. It says, go ahead, turn to Baal and Ishtar, turn to all your harlotry and see how that helps you when I bring judgment against this nation. And as you recall, it didn't help them at all. The Assyrians took the northern kingdom of Israel. Israel had divided in two since the time of David. And the northern kingdom was taken over by the Assyrians in 722 BC. And the southern kingdom, which included Jerusalem and Judah, was taken over by the Babylonians in 586 BC. And it's because of the idolatry, the continued idolatry in the face of the prophets just saying, no, 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 no. We don't have any prophets with a big enough voice to say no today to what's happening in America. In the early church, Babylon was likely a code name for Rome, because obviously in the New Testament period, Rome was the center of the earthly government and spiritual harlotry. Emperor worship, which was the Bible taught in the New Testament, the one thing that Paul and the others find the most offensive is emperor worship. Rome said, you can worship any god you want as long as you worship the emperor as a god. And Israel, of course, said, no, there's only one God. We're not going to worship the emperor. And that's why Peter and Paul were both ultimately killed, and all the other martyrs of the Roman Empire in the early centuries of the church, because they would not worship the emperor as God. And so the emperor worship plus toleration of all of the mystery religion make Rome just sort of the central gathering place of everything that is ungodly around in the entire Mediterranean and Western world. They ruled over the world just like Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar did in the days of Isaiah in the Old Testament. Verse 7. Revelation 17 again. Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman, of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. Shucks, I got ahead of myself. I already told you. Anyway, the beast that you saw was and is not and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. That is one of the more difficult passages in the book of Revelation. There were rumors that Caesar Nero had been killed, and there's several times there were rumors that he had been killed, and he was the chief persecutor of the church. But then he wasn't really dead, and so he came, he suddenly appeared again, and we don't know if that's what that reference is, or to something that is yet going to happen in the end times. We don't know. But the dictator of the world that is will appear to have died and will be resurrected in some way. And this is the first beast from Revelation chapter 13. And there it talks about his apparent death and reviving as well. Verse 9 of 17 again. Here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Rome is famous for sitting upon 7 hills. I even have the names of them here. The city of 7 hills usually refers to Rome. Aventine Hill, Caelian Hill, Capitoline Hill, Esquiline Hill, Palatine Hill, Quirinial Hill, Viminal Hill. And I even have them in Latin as well, if you'd like to hear it. But anyway, 7 hills upon which Rome has built. And of course, because of the infamy, a lot of towns since the days of the Bible have wanted to build on 7 hills and become a big, wonderful city like Rome was, including St. Paul. Yeah, and I've known that St. Paul was built on 7 hills, but I'm trying to figure out which 7 are they. Well, you got the various hills, but and nobody, I looked that up this week too, or sometime in the last weeks in my delirium. I looked up and there isn't total agreement, but there's definitely at least 7 hills in St. Paul. I have a list of other cities that are built on 7 hills. Cincinnati, Ohio, Moscow, Richmond, Virginia, built to include Union Hill, Church Hill, Council Hill, Shockoe Hill, Gamble's Hill, Navy Hill, and Oregon Hill. It's almost as though the way they said that, built to include, as though Richmond was, you know, like the capital of Virginia and the capital of the South, and let's build it on 7 hills. Yeah, we'll be just like Rome. We'll be great. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You don't want to be a great bad guy, folks. Hello, St. Paul, Minnesota, San Francisco, California. I've got about 20 other cities here, everywhere from Prague in the Czech Republic to Pula in Croatia, Worcester in Massachusetts, etc. Any questions before we go to chapter 18? Chapter 18, a dirge for the destruction of Babylon and the city itself. This is a song and a funeral dirge. And we'll begin reading here at verse 1. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having a great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. This is a big angel. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. There are 3 Babylons. There are actually 3 aspects of this city on 7 hills. There's political Babylon, as in Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and Rome, which was the superpower that exercised dominion over the entire Western world in the 1st century, which is ultimately, biblically, the empire of the beast, the Roman Empire. And so you have political Rome. Then you have spiritual Babylon that we've been talking about so far tonight. Nimrod's counter-religion, the mother of harlots. Don't worship the real God, worship the God that I've associated with my wonderful city of Babylon, etc., etc., and the religion that worships Nimrod and his wife themselves. And in the Roman Empire, they had the imperial cult, in other words, the worship of the emperor, and they enforced emperor worship throughout the empire. They made you worship, and if they heard that you were one of these people that didn't worship, they hauled you before the courts and they said, worship the empire now or die. And a lot of Christians died. In fact, it's interesting, a lot of Christians renounced Christ and did worship the emperor. And after the persecutions, the church was frustrated with, what do we do with these people now? Because they said, we're sorry, we want to follow Jesus after all. Anyway, interesting footnote, huh? But so you have spiritual Babylon, the worship of the emperor and all of the other false gods and goddesses in the Roman Empire. And then commercial Babylon it brings up here. The commerce that develops around the capital of the world. The center of a political empire becomes the center of the commercial empire. And Revelation 18 centers seemingly more around the commercial Babylon, the merchants, the ships that transport goods, and the prosperity that's generated through them. This taking over of our nation by super companies is not of God. This is something that the Bible denounces in the book of Revelation, chapter 18. I heard another voice saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins and lest you receive of her plagues." God's people have to come out from among Babylon. Don't be a part of this commercial system. God forbid, don't worship the empire or any of the false gods. But don't be connected to this whole world system. Verse 5, "For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." The difference between sins and iniquities, sins is individual sins that people do. Iniquity is lawlessness. It's just living without a law, sinning as a lifestyle. God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, "I sit as a queen and am no widow, and will not see sorrow." That's the commercial empires we have today. I'm undefeatable. I rule everything. Therefore, her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. Adolf Hitler rebuilt Germany after World War I with the commercial system, with just massive manufacturing and the building of his whole war machine and everything, and made Germany a power again commercially, after being totally defeated and having inflation to the point where you'd bring a whole bag full of gold to buy a loaf of bread, kind of a thing. And but get the commerce going, get the economy going, and you can rebuild it. Anyway, and so this chapter is judgment on the commercial Babylon, for her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered to her iniquities. Render to her justice. Did I read this already? Yeah, I did. So God judges the sins of the industrial business world and the particular kind of oppression that they exercised over mankind. The banking rules America. Insurance. What are the tallest buildings in every downtown? The insurance buildings. Commercial and manufacturing industries, even the medical industry. I was talking to a doctor. I talked to a lot of doctors in the last couple of weeks. But anyway, and one of them was just kind of, emptying his wrath with me. And I said, boy, it's really pathetic down in the ER. There's no rooms. There's no place to put all the people in the ER. They're lined up and I was there for a day, just in a hallway, lined up again, foot to head, up and down all the hallways of the ER. And you're coming for help and you're getting whatever help you can get, but it's so overcrowded. There's no place to put you. There's no room to stick you in the ER or in the hospital, for that matter, for a nurse to deal with you on a regular basis and really get on top of this thing. And I said, that's tragic. And he said, it's on purpose. They had all these beautiful buildings and they sold them for a profit. And now they're doing this. And this doctor just started railing at just how to save a few pennies and to it has become big business. It has become big business today. The medical industry of all things. And all these things, the commercial world, the manufacturing industries, insurance, banking, medical industry, they control our modern world. They make the rules. Manipulate the politicians. The politicians have to kiss the behinds of all of the powerful people that be. Otherwise, they will not get elected, and they know it. And the politicians are the ones, along with the commercial world, that decide the course of things that we live by. I have some old statistics I wrote down some probably 10 years ago that in the early 80s, they would lay people off, and then they'd get another job. You get laid off from your job, and then you look for another job. I was laid off several times in the 70s going through this whole thing, but the next job you get was $62 less a week than what you were making before. And then 10 years later, it was $90 less a week than you were making before. And that's taking inflation into account. And today, by 2020, who knows what it is. But people lose their jobs, they get another job. If you've got a conscience and have any gumption at all, you're going to find a job. You don't have to live under a bridge someplace. I don't want to sound merciless, but really, I always found a job, and I didn't have a fancy education. I eventually had a biblical education, but I was metal stamping. I was working a punch press. Anyway, and I'd get laid off, and I'd get another job, but guess I didn't make as much money at this next job. And anyway, it's a downward trend. And full-time jobs are being lost as they put part-time people on, because you don't have to pay part-time people the benefits. They're working out all the tricks to give us less and make more themselves. And as the Western world quits smoking, the manufacturers of the cigarettes are marketing cigarettes to the developing world. You go into Singapore and Malaysia and Philippines, everybody's smoking. And you don't see that here anymore, but you do there. And it's like, are you kidding? Everybody's smoking. And because they're marketing it there, this is just like they did here. It's sexy. All the women will pursue you if you put the right grease in your hair and smoke the right kind of cigarette. And they purposely target places where the safety standards are lower, and outlawed products, outlawed medications. I think sometimes we're a little bit too stringent about the medications. There's probably a lot of medications out there. Kathy could probably answer this better than me, that would do us some good. But they're marketing them in Singapore, that's for sure, or in probably Singapore may not be the greatest illustration. It's quite an advanced city, but in the Philippines and such like that, these medications that are considered to be poisonous, and, well, the downside is more dangerous than the upside, et cetera, without regard for human life. Just so we sell our cigarettes, darn it. And we sell our medications and everything else. The manipulation of oil prices. How many know that the oil prices aren't going up and down because they found new oil or lost some? Hello? It's going up and down because the market is being messed with. Millions of people losing their jobs, their homes, their savings, as the markets crash. God is going to judge commercial Babylon. That's what Revelation 18 is about. God is going to judge commercial Babylon. The kings of the earth, verse 9, who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her, will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. Oh no, our economy is crashing. Standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind and object of ivory, incense, fragrant oil, and frankincense, wine and oil. We got a whole shopping list here. The fruit that your soul has longed for has gone from you. All the things which are rich and splendid are gone from you. You shall find them no more at all. This is a judgment of God on the commercial system of Rome, of the Babylon, the political Babylon, commercial Babylon, spiritual Babylon. For in 1 hour, verse 17, great riches came to nothing. Boy, you saw that in the Great Depression. All of a sudden, people had nothing. Verse 19, they threw dust on their head and cried out, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. New York City, the greatest city in the world, brought to her knees by the Great Depression. Oh, we have all sorts of policies in place now to guard against that happening again. Not if it hits big enough. Not if it hits big enough, and the Bible says it's gonna. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and your holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down. By the way, there's no sea near the literal city of Babylon, and in the first century he is definitely talking about Rome, but he's talking about the Londons and the New Yorks and today. Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found anymore, and the sound of the harpists and musicians, all the wonderful life, the flutists, the trumpeters, will not be heard in you anymore. No craftsman of any kind shall be found in you anymore, and the sound of the millstone shall be not heard in you anymore. This whole thing can come crashing. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore, and the voice of a bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you anymore. For your merchants and your great men of the earth, for your sorcery and all the nations were deceived, and in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints and all who were slain on the earth. When the time comes, God is going to judge ungodliness. And there's no avoiding it. The heartless, seemingly oblivious capitalists of our military industrial complex are probably inflicting far greater pain on our nation than drug cartels. Free enterprise is God's pattern. Be not mistaken that everyone should prosper according to his or her own industry and wisdom. But the pursuit of profits without morality is, and without being tempered by concern for the repercussions of me getting rich. What about all the other people that I got rich on? What about those people sitting in the ER and when you just sold all those extra hospitals you had because it was costing too much to keep them going? Our free enterprise can't be driven by pure greed. And everybody said, I'll tell you what, I haven't been excited about a teaching for a while. But when I was studying this, I just, oh boy, God, this needs to be preached. We need to hear it. Remember, the key things to remember, they're Babylon, whether it's Rome, whether it's Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, whether it's the military industrial complex in America, or whatever it is. There's the political aspect, there's the commercial aspect, and there's the spiritual aspect. And we have to keep our noses clean and by all means prosper and work and do what you need to do. I mentioned how I'm going to work against the advice of all my friends and wife, and but I do want to take care of business. At the same time, I'm not hurting anybody else by doing it.